Hello and welcome to the Broadband Bunch Zero Touch Learning Series. I'm Joe Coldbella, and today's topic, the new IT, how technology leaders are preparing for the shift. Today's event is brought to you by our founding sponsor, ETI Software Solutions, your zero touch automation experts, Utopia Fiber, building a more connected nation, DXTEL, home of the Harper Broadband Marketing Library, by Calix, Simplify, Excite, and Grow, and ITK Solutions, process first, technology second. You can follow the Broadband Bunch on social media for Twitter on Podcast Bunch, and for LinkedIn, just go to the search bar and type in Broadband Bunch and we come right up. Today's session is interactive, so please submit your questions if you have any. This session is recorded and will be available to all attendees. And finally, if you have any suggestions for future topics, please submit them at hello@broadbandbunch.com. Our host today is industry veteran and broadband ambassador, Guy Viventi, the founder of BevTech. Guy, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. And welcome everybody to today's session on the new IT, and specifically focusing on how technology leaders are preparing for the shift. Let me start by introducing today's panelists. Speaking of leaders, I have two terrific technology leaders with me today to help us in the discussion. First, let me start by welcoming you, Nikunj. Nikunj Nirmal is a business executive, a technology enthusiast, and an accomplished leader with an extensive background in digital strategy, brand and customer experience, intellectual property acquisition, product management, and more. Currently, he is at Amazon as a principal, where he is heading up the international expansion programs, focusing on the launch of e-commerce, retail, and business around the globe. Welcome, Nikunj.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And also, we have Rob Kafka. Rob Kafka is an AVP of technology at AT&T. Rob Kafka has over 30 years experience leading software development teams in large and small companies. A good 25 of those, if I'm correct, Rob, is in telecom, and a big part of our audience is in the telecom space. Rob is a transformational leader with proven abilities to lead, implement change, and drive organizational growth. In his current role as the AVP of IT, he is leading various development and operational tools functions at AT&T, where he's focusing on things such as DevSecOps, CI/CD platforms, and other related functions. Rob, welcome to you as well. Appreciate having you here.
Thank you, Guy. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, let's get started. Hey, let's face it. IT continues to change, and I would say that it's changing in ways that we haven't seen before, okay? Whether we're talking about the shifts in IT labor or the actual role of IT or the future of IT, right? There are certain changes that are coming about that I think as leaders we need to prepare for. And we're going to talk about some of these today, and I'll be asking Nikunj and Rob to give us their perspective. So I'm going to start the discussion focusing on technology labor. And I looked up some statistics that were actually published by the US Labor Group, and specifically, and this is a few months old, it said that in December of last year, we closed the year adding, in December alone, 11,000 tech jobs in tech firms. When you expanded it to all other industries, 180,000 in December alone jobs were added making it 13 consecutive months of employment growth. In fact, when you look at unemployment in the tech industry, depending on what you read, it's somewhere around 2%, which puts it a couple of points actually below the national average of other positions. So I'm going to start with you, Nikunj. If you think about what I just shared in terms of employment statistics, this has to have an impact on IT and the ability to hire talent. Could you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on this topic and what you're doing about it to prepare for it?
So a very pertinent topic right now, I think, and it's not just the IT industry, where it is more complex than the IT industry because of the skill requirements, but we are seeing this labor market strain across all industries. Right? To start off with, I remember traveling back by my car, and I stopped at a place, and McDonald's is closed because they don't have enough labor. Just trying to order a cake, don't know when the people would be available. Like when would be somebody at the counter so I can order? It's like, we don't know. We don't have enough people, right? But coming to the technology world, so the labor market is really tight right now, and it's highly compounded by the attrition rates as well. And that goes back to the fact that because there is so much of demand, we see high attrition as well. What we're looking at is people are more picky about the kind of work they want to do, where they want to work from, what kind of companies they want to work for, what the companies really stand for. There is more demand for increasing flexibility. There's more demand for complete remote work. A lot of firms have been responding with providing that more flexibility, going completely remote. And all of this is adding more and more strain in finding the right candidates. We also seen, especially at Amazon, this is public news, Amazon changed its structure wherein increased the maximum base pay that was provided. It more than doubled the maximum base pay at Amazon. Right? So this is in a way to be more aligned with what the industry is going through and what the challenges are. I think some of the ways companies can tackle is a lot of reskilling. We also have to look at the fact that because there is a lot of demand and the pay scales are going up, there is an increased amount of interest from the people who are not from the tech industry to enter the industry. So there's also an opportunity for us to reskill those people. Those could be reskilled from within the organization or from even outside of the organization. Second is benchmarking the best practices, driving more automation wherever possible so that the dependency is decreased. And third, I would say, is trying to find the right skill level for the right job. Many times we see that people, especially the developers who are higher in demand right now, they are doing the work which can be done by people who are not so skilled at development. Maybe look at QA engineers to work on some of the config related works. Right? So just trying to figure out the right mix of talent and the work they do, we can optimize the talent that we have and fulfill the demand that the business is having right now.
Great thoughts. Yeah, we'll probably touch on the reskilling point again a little bit later. I didn't know, by the way, that you frequented McDonald's. I just learned something about you, Nikunj, in your going through the drive-through. But seriously, I mean, you talked about attrition. I mean, have you guys heard about, the new term? They talk about the Great Resignation, right, in technology. You see articles on that. In fact, I did find a study that was recently completed that said that the majority of surveyed tech employees thought that they'd be looking for a job in the next 12 months, okay? And one report stated that half of those expected to actually land a new opportunity. I mean, that's huge. I think those are some big numbers, and also says a lot about the times that we work in. As a response, this goes a little bit closer to what Nikunj you were talking to. As a response, a lot of companies are retraining existing staff and even hiring non-technical folks for technical jobs. So let me shift to you, Rob, with some of those sentiments. I mean, thinking about hiring non-tech employees, to fill technical roles. What are your thoughts on that, and what are some of the things that you're seeing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, the general trend around people rethinking their work life, really did occur, has been occurring since the start of the COVID lockdowns, and really a fundamental shift in the way people work and what they're doing and what they find important, combined with really the new generation coming into the workforce that has a different view on what work what work means to you, what the relationship is with that. So there's some very real changes that are undergoing, and we're still figuring out really where what that looks like. We're not seeing a massive amount of turnover in our space, but there is absolutely pressure and a change in what's happening in the dynamic in the workforce. Hiring is very tight right now across all levels of talent, from college hires on up, and the expectations for the workforce are changing. From our viewpoint, there's we have had over a number of years a focus on retraining our employees, not so much from a fact of bringing non-technical people into the workforce, although that is a component of it, but it's even in taking older technologies and helping employees come in and becoming up to speed on the latest skill sets, because IT has evolved tremendously over the last decade, and every decade seems to increase another order of magnitude as it goes. So it's only getting faster in our evolution. So there's a strong focus. We've done a lot of programs where we've helped our employees going back to school, getting advanced degrees, getting training in areas in advanced technologies. And that goes for both technical and non-technical employees. We had, as we shift to the public cloud, we made an effort to get through and have all of our employees, whether or not they were going to be doing technical implementations in the cloud, or whether they were the program managers and project managers who wouldn't necessarily be it. We had them go through administrative training on the cloud to understand the fundamental shift that makes in the industry. So huge focus and effort on that piece, combined with the other trends that are going on in the industry, right? As we pivot from a silo-based development, where you have development, just testers, you have individual roles throughout the chain, into a DevSecOps model, where you're really much more of a full lifecycle implementation. We're having helped developers who have always been focused on one slice of the pie really expand out and cover areas that they aren't comfortable with right now. And so there's a lot of evolution that way as well. And the other thing that does come in, I think this starts to get back to the hiring less technical employees, is really as we pivot into a stronger use of software as a service platforms. The types of development that you do on a platform like that are much more configuration, some low code type of components, which are they're technical skills, but they're not administering the web platform for high availability. The SaaS platform does that for you. So the classic IT roles, the classic development, operational support, engineering the platform roles aren't needed as great a degree in the SaaS-based configuration. You can really do more configuration, low code type of development work. So IT is definitely evolving, and I think that I would say that the amount of work in development, classic technical fields, isn't shrinking, but the scope of IT is growing at such a pace that there's an expansion of the number of people who essentially will be in IT in one form or another, and the percentage of that of IT that is not deep technical is shifting.
Yeah. Great thoughts. I mean, you both touched on reskilling, which I think is pivotal. In fact, Rob, I caught your comment that you're actually not seeing, at least in your space, significant attrition which is good. And one of the things that you talked about, I think, is important for technology leaders to think about, and you used other words, but it's really employee growth, right? It's like you're stretching folks probably just because you need to, right? But in many ways, it's providing opportunities that may not have been there otherwise. So stretching people, I think, is helping with some reskilling that we talked about earlier. But I'd like to kind of take it back to employees' expectations, because you touched on this too. And I'm going to come to you, Nikunj, with this next question, because when you talk about employee expectations, right, you pick up an article and it's typically a discussion on, hey, everybody can work at home. Well, we now need you to come back in the office, or maybe something in between, what many refer to as a hybrid, which is, I think, is where they're settling. But not just focusing on, work location, but employee expectations in general and technology positions. What shifts are you seeing in expectations? Could you elaborate on some of your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think I would classify into 3 different categories. One is, of course, the location. I'll come back to that later. Second is the compensation. And the third is the type of work and the type of company they want to work for. Right. Let's start with the third one. People are picking because of the options available and because of such a great demand in the industry. Most of the folks I talk to have multiple offers to start with. So simplify the process. Somebody's looking for a job, there are multiple offers. So they have options to pick from. And when they have options, they want to pick the type of work, because compensation, while it is a factor, but they know that that can be negotiated. Again, companies are reacting by increasing the compensation, by giving more perks and additional things, right? I'll come back to the benefits as well. But when you look at all of that, it's basically the way we say in real estate, right? It's seller's market. So it's basically the job seekers market right now, wherein they are dictating the amount of work that they'll do. I have seen people negotiate, I only work this much, right? I only want to work 30 hours. Right? I have also seen people very clearly saying, I only want to work remote. I don't want to work at all from office. Right? So those are different terms and conditions that people are coming. So in terms of expectation, a lot of it is driven by the candidates versus employees right now. So that is a big shift. Coming back to the other categories I talked about, when we look at the remote working, so employees are looking at upfront in the interviews. Very lately, I've seen people asking, "Can I work remotely 100%?" Even though the job posting does not say that, right? So that's a clear expectation that we are seeing. Additionally, when I talk to my peers in other companies, they are seeing a similar trend. At the end, what I see is it's not just complete remote work, but people are looking at some level of flexibility. While some are looking for being completely remote and being total digital nomads, as we say, but most of the people are looking for some level of flexibility. And companies are responding to that. We've seen that saying hybrid seems to be a winner, more or less, the way you said it, right? Where companies are responding saying that, okay, you will have some level of flexibility, you work on it in such a way that people have a choice to make with some constraints, some restrictions around that. And then coming to the type of work. So this is again going back to what I was talking earlier, wherein employees want to be very selective in terms of what skills they develop while working. They want to be always marketable. And now given the options, they want to continue to evolve on those skills, right? Be it working in a particular domain, be it working on a particular technology, or being in a particular type of growth stream, right? Going towards managerial, going towards more of product management. So they want to chart their careers out. And they're asking these questions upfront versus, hey, we'll go and figure it out. Right? So I think there is a shift in the attitude, and at and large candidates understand that, and that's now up to the companies to respond to attract the right talent.
Yeah, those are good thoughts. I mean, think about today's discussions, how IT leaders are preparing. I mean, understanding the data, right? Understanding what people want and what's going on, I think, is the first step, and maybe some would say acceptance, right? because I could definitely imagine some of the discussions being held about it. That's not who we are. But I think the truth is companies have to change to align to the realities of these expectations. I think we're finding that out. In fact, you know, on your point on flexibility, which is one of those new realities, Bankrate had a study. They actually had a survey, and they found that 48% of workers not only asked for flexibilities, but they acted on, if they didn't get it, they acted by leaving, right? So this is not just a request. They're seeing people actually leaving. And again, we could go on about this, but you probably would agree. Some put that flexibility, or a higher percentage put that flexibility even above some of the other categories that you mentioned, like compensation, you know? And I thought that life balance was in there too, where you said that you're seeing some asking for 30-hour work weeks and such. Speaking of age group, go ahead.
People have already seen that they have been able to work remotely. So again, this does not apply to all jobs. There are some jobs that you have to be at a particular location. There are some jobs where you can do remotely. People who have been able to perform remotely for a couple of years, they're like, why not? And this saves me time to travel. This saves me time to just get ready. It gives me a lot of flexibility to take care of the family, and I can just focus on myself as well. So I think that's where the shift is, and this is most likely here to stay. Right? The flexibility is here to stay. It may not be 100% remote. There is some level of collaboration needed. But yeah, go ahead.
Did you want to do a quick add-on?
Yeah, just one thing we have to pay attention here to is that the lockdowns associated with COVID really played a transformational role in society, very, very similar to those of us who went through the 9/11 exposure back in, what was it, 2001, right, where we shut down air travel for a period of time. Which at the time many businesses never could fathom doing, right? But we had to because of an external event, and companies learned naturally. You know, we never traveled as much post 9/11 as we did from pre 9/11 because you realize what you change. The COVID lockdowns really have forced people to live the life of remote work. Everyone in the company, from executives down. And they had to find ways to help people jobs that previously couldn't work from home. We've moved jobs that we never felt could be work from home into work from home, built technologies to enable that to happen. We've had a lot of technology evolution over the last course of year under the force of desperate desire, desperate need, right? The evolution in what's happened has been accelerated because of this unique event. You're not going to step out of these lockdowns and go back to what you were 2 years ago. Everyone's expectation has changed in some way, shape, or form. What's possible today is fundamentally different than what was, or I should say what's practical today, right, is more fundamentally different than what was practical just 2 years ago. We've probably gotten 10 or more years of development, real evolution in the way things work in that period of time. And so we're still trying to figure out what, trying to learn what those new realities are. But it is that 2 year period is a fundamental shift that we really don't experience very often in our lifetimes, and it's making real changes. So
good comments. I mean, just being very real, I think all those are great points you both stated, but I think the one that stands out for me is that employees have a lot of choices. They have options, especially technology employees. And I think this reality and accepting that a change focused on flexibility is something that IT leaders need to understand and find a way to embrace. In fact, it's not just all employees. And I was looking at some data and understanding, age segments is important too, like new entrants, Gen Zers. They ask for flexibility 3 times more than say baby boomers. The exact numbers were, 32% asked for flexibility, Gen Zers. And, then as you go up, millennials, 24%, Gen Xers, 13%, baby boomers, 12%, right? So understanding that differentiation by age segments, I think, is important as well. So it'll be interesting to watch. What I'd like to do now is shift the attention away from the labor side and talk more about the IT role in the organization, right? The IT role. A couple points before I ask the question. Forrester had an article where they actually talk about the convergence of the IT role and business roles. They were talking about it more from a senior management position, maybe C-levels, okay? And they had an interesting point, I thought, where they said that these senior C-level positions, think CIOs, CTOs, will begin to get revenue targets. And the point they were making is, hey, my goal as an IT technology leader isn't so much just to support the business, but to actually grow the business, right? Like get revenue targets. Some of my friends in marketing would say it's about time. But nevertheless, Rob, let me come to you first, focusing on the role of IT and its changes. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think you're spot on. This is something that's constantly changing over time, and there's a bit of a pendulum in terms of where the focus is, and it depends somewhat on where a business is in its life cycle, and what opportunities there are out there. But in general, this is actually something that the businessification of IT, the focus on the IT is supporting a business function, not developing a technology, right? When you're outside of when you're not a product, delivery, right? That it very much is true. There is a shift. There has been a shift over time, and I think you're going to continue to do it. I remember as I was growing up through my career, one of the big focuses was on helping IT people understand the financial terms, understand the balance sheet, understand how they contribute and work out. And so, while I don't think this is new, I do think that you are seeing a continued shift and evolution of that. There are some areas, and this has been where you look at and companies have gotten IT leadership that is too business focused, and oftentimes that was manifested itself by, the CIO actually wasn't a direct report of the chairman or of the CEO, right? And a lot of other structures where I think over time IT has elevated itself in its position and posture of the company. But it has to be integrated in as you get to that direct report at the CEO level. You need to be thinking like the CEO needs to think, and it's not. And when it comes to your internal IT technology, the technology isn't the magic, right? Your products matter, right? But when it comes to the internal technology, you want to make it as cheap and as efficient as possible. So that focus, I think, you're going to continue to see that shift. It's definitely something that's out there today.
Yeah, and personally speaking, I love that shift. I've always been a big fan of technologists learning the business. But I think going back to what technology leaders need to do is make that an intentional focus, right? Make that part of the plan for their IT teams. So I definitely see a change in the role, right? Being more business oriented and a hybrid, almost technology business leader. And, maybe going down a little bit deeper, I've always found it interesting to look at how decisions are made in organizations, okay? And we'll take it right to IT and IT decision making. Gartner published a report that stated that in 2022, which we're in, right, that they published this last year, at the end of last year, we would see continued decentralization, right, of software purchase decisions, where authority and decision making will move more to the lines of business, right? In fact, they interviewed board of directors, and 40% of the board of directors interviewed said that they actually were going to shift the actual monies, the budgets, to the lines of business to make these software purchases. I will tell you, those are some interesting comments and results of the survey. Even if it's 5 or 10% off, I think it says a lot about the shift in thinking. Let's come to you, Nikunj, on this one. Do those numbers surprise you? What are some of your thoughts on that?
No, it does not surprise actually. Been seeing this trend for a very long time now, and part of it, in my assessment, is dependent on the increase in the demand for agility in the business. Right? We have seen this manifest even in the software development life cycles, where we got more agile and safe agile kind of processes in there, where it's an expectation that the business, product, IT, all of them work together, right? And this stems from the belief that IT needs to be more closely aligned with the business. So it's, if I look at it, this is more at an operational level versus I think what we are looking at in terms of budgeting, and the way the board is looking is more from a business and a strategy standpoint. And both of them, if you think, are in a way manifestation of the same thought process. I'll break this down into two. One is the organizational structure, where business and IT are closely aligned, and second is where an IT is a separate function within the whole organization, right? The organizations where business and IT are closely aligned, many a times within the same business unit, I don't see there is a lot of risk in terms of the line of business getting the budget and making the decisions, because IT is already part of it, with the assumption that the right IT leaders with the right skill set and the background are consulted and are actually making the decisions, and the budget is then given out by the business leader. That's perfectly fine. But I see a greater risk where IT is a separate function altogether, and business goes out and makes a decision to buy a software product, right, or maybe a SaaS-based service. The problem is, it's not that the product is right or wrong, whether it's right or wrong for the particular organization. IT understands the complexities. A product does not stand by itself. We all have enough experience to see that there is a right level of integration, data, everything that has to be available, and IT has to be involved to understand the complexity and the integration challenges. Because a SaaS product salesman can come in and promise the world, it may not fit. It may have been successful somewhere else, does not translate to success within the organization right away, right? And aligning with those complexities, so those decision making have to be where the right IT functions are consulted and taken into account before you go and commit and make large contracts, right? I think so. That is a risk I see. The decisions, again, not surprising. It's more to do with the perception that business has now more and more understanding and more alignment, and they know what they want, so they can go out and take care of it on their own, right? The truth is somewhere in the middle, yes and no, and I think there is increased collaboration. That is the answer, no matter what the org structure is. So there is no right or wrong over here, but there is a midway answer, and all organizations should align with that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we're talking about collaboration, and again, and I keep bringing it back to what can IT leaders do, because you're sharing some of that. And again, it comes down to accepting this isn't going to change. I think the days of mandating, right, are again behind us, and some would say they should be behind us. That doesn't mean you throw away focus on security. That doesn't mean that you throw away, good procurement, good practices, change management, risk management, some of the things you talked about. But I'll tell you, watching where the money's going, I think will tell you a lot about the shifts. One more thing, we said that some of the board of directors will actually shift more of that purchasing power, if you want to use a different term, to the lines of business, okay? But some of the board of directors said that they will actually direct and state where they want some of that money to go. And by the way, wouldn't surprise the audience, our audience, the three of the leading technologies that the board of directors said that they would want the money to be focused to, they will decide is on 5G, Internet of Things, and edge computing. That's just an added piece of information. But let's talk about IT investments, right? Regardless of who's spending the money or who controls the money, right? But IT investments, I mean, security, continues to be an area, a carve out, if you will, of a reasonable amount of spend. However, studies show, and this was a Gartner report, that over the last 2 years, security spend, although still getting a contribution, has remained fairly flat, okay, in general. Hardware spend has been down, while software spend down about 5% and software spend up about 5%. And by the way, most would agree that's likely because of the focus on cloud, right? Less spend on infrastructure, hardware, and probably more spend on software. But the biggest area in terms of gain, increased budget, is on the concept of automate everything, and specifically automating manual operational efforts, where studies show that the return on that investment is 5+ fold in terms of cost to benefit. So Rob, give us some insights on IT spending. Are you seeing a shift of where the money's being directed, and what are some of your thoughts on what leaders can do?
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely a shift underway. Some of the things you identified out are spot on from what we're seeing. Security spending, I would categorize as remaining high, but not growing like it has over the past few years. Right? We elevated security spending as an industry over the last few years because of the acknowledgement of the threat, and that threat remains and is still a considerable investment. But its growth is not as great as in past years, which is a good thing, because if it had continued at that growth rate, it'd be all consuming, right? So a lot of effort there, but it's just one of many. Hardware, software absolutely are shifting. The hardware spends are coming down. Virtualization is a large part of that, whether that's cloud or on-prem work. We're virtualizing network equipment that is no longer a hardware purchase, and now it's basically straight software, right? Running on generic purpose computers, right? The virtualization and the software-defined aspects of most types of hardware will continue that same evolution. I expect that you're going to see that trend continue. Where it comes to automation, that is a heavy focus, because it has the largest payoff in terms of human assets, right? Especially as you start talking about the difficulty in getting resources in different areas. Anything that you can automate out has very real and very fast payback period. So we're investing very heavily in automation. I expect that that's going to continue, and that's automating not only the business of IT, but also the businesses that IT supports, right? So that's helping the call center reps and the sales reps and the real business users of IT be more efficient, as well as things like AI apps, where you're trying to automate the business of IT, automate the restoration of systems, right? Where instead of having outage calls, getting a large group of users on place, being able to put systems in place to be able to automatically detect what's happening, how to detect failures, and resolve those without human intervention. Those are high payback period or functionality to be implementing. So yeah, I think that's pretty spot on.
Yep. Perfect. Hey, let's shift again. I want to talk about IT sourcing. Another topic that, truth is, sometimes it's an uncomfortable discussion in some circles, because when you say IT sourcing, many people, especially in IT, think outsourcing, right? But it's a reality. I don't think outsourcing is a thing of the past in IT, nor am I so sure that it ever will be, right? But what I do like is that we're seeing a shift into more of what I like to call smart sourcing. I thought another research study, this one by Hackett, was very interesting, and it said that automation, Rob, speaking of automation, is used to offset the cost of outsourcing, yielding savings of 41%. Now, you heard that right. I didn't say that people are outsourcing to gain 41% savings. That may have been a statement, maybe 10, 15 years ago. What I said is more companies are focused on automation to offset the cost of outsourcing, right? Further, one more data point before Nikunj, I come to you with the question. Another data point that we have seen, or at least I've seen, is that, you know, Fortune 10, Fortune 50s, maybe even smaller companies are starting to bring back, they've rationalized which jobs they should retain in-house versus outsource, and we're actually seeing a movement where some have been insourced. So Nikunj, what's your reaction to all that? What are some of your thoughts?
I think you got to look at the history where the outsourcing is started, right? And outsourcing primarily was done for two reasons. One was expertise, where you don't have the right skill set, you don't have the right level of tools, and you outsource that. Second is the cost reduction. I think we are more focused on the cost reduction in this conversation. I think the expertise-based outsourcing will continue, and there is a need for that, no matter what the cost is. When you need something, you need the experts to work on. But from a cost reduction standpoint, a lot of outsourcing, particularly in the tech industry or the tech outsourcing, was focused on only cost reduction, wherein we did see a lot of offshoring as well happen at that point of time. And this was probably 2 decades back, where it started in a big way and went on for almost over 1.5 decades, right? Beyond that, we see that now the focus is, hey, there's a lot of maturity, there's a lot of understanding, there are a lot of tools that are in place which can help achieve automation. Again, going back to, I'll draw a linkage from closeness with business. With business being more closely aligned with IT, they are wanting to drive some of these automation to reduce the dependency, not just on outsourcing partners, but also on IT itself. Rob touched upon the low code, no code as well, which means that, you know, again, there is less dependency that we want to create. And in a way, if you think about low code, no code is a large way of automation, wherein you don't really need to have developers go in and do the coding, QA, but underlying the code is written, right? So there's a big automation in itself. So my reaction overall is, I think this trend will continue. It is beneficial for the companies because they have lesser dependency, they have more savings getting generated, but it does not mean that outsourcing partners will suffer. I think the overall demand and the volume is such high that in a way it offsets the talent requirement also. So it's serving multiple purposes at the same time. And I think as overall the industry will continue to explore in all different directions, it will continue to be a mix. Outsourcing will continue to happen for cost reduction purposes as well. Plus, if you think about it right now, acquiring talent is so difficult, outsourcing becomes a way to acquire the talent as well. So there are different dynamics we are seeing over the years because of which outsourcing will continue to happen. So I don't see it going away. I'm not surprised by what the industry is doing. Automation will continue to increase more and more, and it will continue to be an interesting mix. The reasons for that mix will continue to change or evolve over a period of time, but that mix will continue.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Nikunj. Yeah, I agree with you. It will definitely change over time, but I think I want to emphasize the point that one of the key reasons is to possibly deal with the talent shortage as opposed to just operational cost. I think that that card's been played a few times, and as I stated, many are actually trying to now reduce the cost of outsourcing. But you both brought up low code, no code. It usually falls under the category, another one of my favorite phrases, right? Talking about the great resignation. A lot of people talk about self-serve IT. This is self-serve. You need IT? Self-serve. Let's just, since we introduced it, maybe it's obvious, maybe it's not. Rob, I'll come to you. Maybe a quick, how should we think about low code, no code? And what should we as IT leaders do to prepare for it?
Yeah. So, I mean, when we talk about low code, no code, we're really talking about, this is not new tech, not new concepts. It is new. There's new technologies making it more feasible, right? And quite honestly, there's a more educated business base that understands the concepts of technology than has been available in past generations. The kids coming out of school today, the students coming out of school today, are have grown up with it, where where that wasn't the case for our generations or the ones before. So, but what we're talking about in terms of low code, no code are technologies where you're primarily configure it, right? If there's capabilities out there, you can configure. If you talk about the SaaS platforms, a lot of the work that you necessarily in ServiceNow or platforms along those lines end up being a capability provided by the platform provider that you are configuring for your business. It may set up workflows, things that don't require hardcore software development techniques. You don't have to worry about load balancing. You don't have to worry about resiliency and requirements. Those things are handed to you or provided for you as part of the platform. It also talks about, really more in the load code capabilities, are tool sets that enable user interfaces and business flows that while they have some level of coding, the languages are very straightforward. They're tuned to ease of use and ease of implementation, and often are provided with graphical drag and drop implementations for your what would have been if then else statements or constructs and flows. And so you can use the tools that are provided by these software vendors to enable what would have required custom coding in the past to be done through these simpler techniques, and it meets the skill sets of an evolving workforce that we have that is used to doing more on their phones and doing more on their own personal computers and the like. And so that is very much an evolving trend, and it goes hand in hand with topics we talked about earlier around the combination of IT and business, right? What we're really trying to do in both of those concepts is enable the business to move fast, right? Don't require to have a go make external requests for what you want to be able to do. If you have a job to do, you have a workflow you need automated, you know what that workflow is, you can use these low code, no code tools to be able to implement the workflow. You don't have to go through long requirement sessions. You don't have to go get funding to go do things. You break down a lot of the mechanisms, a lot of the restrictions that you have in there. And so that is something that while not new, I think is going to continue to be increasing. And as the platforms evolve much more towards standardizations of some of these components, it's going to be a larger and larger role in what we play, in what we do.
Cool. Yeah, good thoughts. Hey, let's pick up the pace a little bit and maybe even have a little fun with a question or two here. So we're going to do a little lightning round. So I'm looking for you guys to give me a quick, short answer on these, okay? Both of you. I'll come to you, Nikunj, first, and then we'll go to Rob. So going back to the IT role and IT being brought into the loop, some articles say, yeah, they're brought into the loop, but it's after the sale has been made. So do you agree, disagree, or do you want to just take the fifth on that one? Nikunj?
I think I disagree on that.
Disagree. Rob?
Yeah, I both agree and disagree. It happens both ways,
That wasn't a choice.
And it's a constant fight. So
yeah, fair enough. Points made. Okay, let's, we've brought up cloud and the shift to cloud. When you think about the shift to cloud, I mean, without a doubt, it's changing IT in and of itself. But thinking about just one change you see in IT as a result of cloud, what's a key one that comes to mind, Nikunj?
Faster time to market, not having to wait for the infrastructure to be ready. You can just keep going.
Making things a little faster because of no infrastructure. Rob?
Yeah, I think the biggest change for us as we've moved into, especially into the public cloud, is a fundamental shift in the way people think about infrastructure and the way you need to build a plan. You're not looking out and planning for a year in advance because of the time required to get up and set up equipment. You can really focus on a shorter time horizon. You can speed projects together. That's the biggest shift.
Very good. Hey, we talked about hybrid work, so I need an honest response on this. Looking just 3 years out, I'm not talking about startups here, but it's just say a company more like the companies you work in, 3 years out, do you think the average IT job will be mostly remote, mostly on site, or a good mix, a hybrid mix? Nikunj.
I would say it's going to be a good mix between the two.
Mix. Rob.
Yeah, 3 years out, I think it's going to be a mix. It's going to evolve from there. So
Interesting. It could be because of that age segment group that you guys fall in that I referenced earlier.
I think it's going to continue to shift. It's going to continue to shift offsite. I just don't think companies are quite ready to go whole hog yet. So.
Okay, fair enough. 3 years out, I actually tend to agree. We talked about decision making, and still, this is not new either. Any study done in the past and today show that employees like to make their own decisions. Here's an interesting decision. Some companies, maybe more forward-thinking, are allowing employees to decide how much vacation they want to take. You need a vacation, you know when to take a vacation, take as much time as you need. So, do you see this unlimited vacation policy catching on, again, in non-startup companies? Nikunj?
I think so. I've already seen a few large companies implement this recently. So I see this trend catching up. Yeah.
Wow, Rob.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I see unlimited vacation. The reality is that there's always limits in some way, shape, or form on that piece. But the focus on that kind of benefit and the amount of time off absolutely is on the increase. The younger employees are very strongly focused on it. So the concept, I think, is there, whether unlimited or not, is actually implemented.
It'll be interesting to watch that too. One more in our speed round here, open source. I mean, it's interesting when you look at Red Hat, being quickly, some would say being replaced by like Rocky Unix, or one that I came to contact with is EDB, which is really Postgres enhanced, actually challenging Oracle relational databases. You're basically seeing the continued pace of open source into some areas that some would say, was protected. So maybe a word of advice to the audience here. Should IT leaders continue to hold back when it comes to open source, or do you think they should move fast now? Nikunj.
I think they should definitely move fast, but be careful, not just because you want to do a technology change. Make sure that change is aligned with your overall architecture, with the business strategy, and then take the right steps to do it. Not just because, hey, it's really cool to go open source, it's really cool to use MongoDB instead of Oracle, we want to do that, right? Everybody is doing that. That's not the right reasons. If it's done for the right reasons, do it right now.
Rob.
Yeah, I would say absolutely move fast up to the capabilities that you have now as you continue to expand those capabilities. You can get over your skis on this one, but if you don't move, you're falling behind. So there is extremely positive gains associated with doing this, and you want to be able to capture those.
Got it. Move fast, you're both saying, but move smart too. Okay, we're up to 2 final questions. Here's what I'm going to do, watching the time. I was going to have you both answer, but I'm going to have one of you take one and one of you take the other. So this first one, let's go to Nikunj. Some would actually say that we're moving to a citizens developer world, right? Where everyone will code, and we touched on that. But my question is going to focus on the consequence, or the outcome is that some people are saying this will be the demise of IT. I wish I had a noise thing. Dun, 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 the demise of IT. So, Nikunj, seriously, are we seeing the elimination of the traditional IT function, or is this more hyperbole than a real possibility?
I think it's more of a hyperbole. Yes, it is possible that, the way I said earlier, there's going to be some work which can be done by people who are not really experts into development or core IT functions. So some of that work would be distributed, but the core tech work, where you definitely need to make sure there is the right level of scalability, right architecture, all of that, it cannot be democratized. It has to be centralized in a way so that others who do not have the right level of expertise, or the so-called citizen developers, are actually able to contribute to it. So the role of IT might switch a little bit as an enabler for the citizen developers, but the core still remains as it is. That doesn't
No
change.
demise. You're saying no demise.
Yeah.
Don't, no fear, no demise. By the way, one final reminder to the audience members, feel free to post a question in the question box on the platform, and we'll try to take a couple here in a second. Final question to you, Rob. I tend to agree, no demise, but I do see the concept of what's called shadow IT continuing. And what's shadow IT? Shadow IT is typically when you have what's somewhat called unauthorized technology solutions and services being procured, right, in pockets of the organization. In fact, can't go to a CIO conference without even, without seeing this topic, even in panel discussions. So, Rob, what are your thoughts on shadow IT? What can IT leaders do to deal with this reality, if you even agree that it's a reality?
Well, it definitely is a reality, and it has been for a while, and it's not going to be going away anytime soon. We talked about some things that would actually, cause it to continue to grow. The thing that I think is most important to do is create the visibility. The problem with shadow IT tends to come from the shadow, right? The fact that it's not that the business is doing it, it's that you don't know it's being done, which creates security issues, architectural issues, consistency issues. That if you just expose that and make it visible, the same groups can do the work without the risk. So I think that really getting some traceability to that, while still allowing them to just go do it, is where the balance point will end up being.
Great. Those are some fantastic thoughts. I want to try to sneak in at least one or so questions from the audience. This is an interesting one. What are your thoughts regarding Agile? So I think the question is on the framework, right? I was taught many times it's not just a methodology, it's a framework. But what are your thoughts regarding Agile for large-scale projects? Many articles continue to say that organizations challenge using Agile at scale. What do you think, Rob? Maybe come to you for that.
We've used Scale Agile to be able to scale up our Agile initiatives to very significant sizes, and have had tremendous results from doing that. It has allowed us to get past some of the constraints that a classic Agile will have, and the biggest challenges we have implementing it had nothing to do with the delivery teams or the trains that are being run, but really our financial processes not really fitting into the value stream mechanisms. And as we fix those, it's been very effective for us to be able to. It's really helped get the business tighter with IT in ways that are very productive. So.
Yeah. So one of the things that, Rob, you're sharing with the group is really address the financial processes, or some could say, hurdles. Here, one more from the audience, and then we'll wrap. This question, Nikunj, comes to you. What impact on IT will AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning have? Some brief thoughts on that.
Sorry, could you repeat that? What are the first part?
When you think about IT as a function, okay, what impact will artificial intelligence and machine learning have on the IT function?
I think it will just all be amalgamated together in a way. Right now, I know we think about AI, ML as more or less a separate unit and more of like a data science. It's essentially, the way I look at it is, it's another field of technology that is enabling the business. So I think of it as part of the overall technology umbrella. In terms of the impact, there may be a short-term impact in terms of, if I were to narrow it down to the talent level, yes, a lot of candidates that I talk to, a lot of students that I talk to, I mentor a lot of students, everybody wants to work in AI and ML, right? They don't know how to do the code development for it. So there will be some level of shortage or some level of attrition towards that. But in long term, I think it all comes together anyways. And one does not exist without either. It won't be two separate fields in the future.
Right, right. They can create some of those low-code, no-code solutions, you know, using the AI models. With that, I want to thank you, Rob, and I want to thank you, Nikunj, for some amazing comments and some thoughts on what IT leaders can do with the new IT. With that, we're closed. Thank you to the audience for joining us today, and you can even submit questions after the fact, and we'll do our best to address them. Thanks, everybody.
Guy, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for attending today's episode, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Bye.